Pokemon Ultra Moon is known for three things: its insane difficulty, the lack of differences from the original Sun and Moon, and those really long cutscenes. But even with so many things holding back its potential, Ultra Moon proves to be a very fun and different speedrun compared to the original Sun and Moon games. Because with threats such as the Trial Captains, some brand new totem Pokemon, and Ultra Necrozma waiting for us, it becomes quite a challenging run to complete. But if speedrunners can persevere through 6 hours of mashing dialogue and cutscenes, they can do anything, including a speedrun of Ultra Moon that starts from the bed, so that we can skip a few minutes of cutscenes that ultimately don't really add anything to the speedrun. Speedrunners will then rush to grab their starter Pokemon, Hawlucha. Now, I know this is the exact starter used to sweep the original Sun and Moon, but it's ultimately just a placeholder Pokemon for bigger and better things, which unfortunately takes about an hour to get to. Within that hour, we'll get past our rival Hop twice, a couple of trainer battles, an entire school, and a tough fight against Ilima, the first of many trial captains throughout the game. Ilima is the first instance of how trainers were buffed in Ultra Moon games, because this is one of the first times in Pokemon history where a Pokemon trainer has effort values on their Pokemon. With each Pokemon that you KO over time, you'll slowly gain what's known as EVs or effort values, which slowly buff a Pokemon's stats each time you gain EVs. And for some reason or another, Game Freak chose to give trainers and totem Pokemon a bunch of effort values in order to make them way stronger than they ever should be. But an even bigger buff for Ultra Moon speedrunners comes from the use of X items. Starting from Generation 7 onward, X items will buff a stat by +2 based on the X item that you use on your Pokemon. This gives Hawlucha the same stat boost that Acid Armor and Nasty Plot give without ever having to teach the moves in the first place, giving us a nice quick way to beat Ilima and get closer to our true goal. This goal is reached upon beating Team Skull on the beach and a quick run straight into the grass near the entrance to the normal trial, where we can find Spearow. I'm sorry if I hyped anyone up because this won't actually be our main Pokemon, but we do need it to trade inside of the Pokemon Center for a busted Halucha, a Pokemon who's infamously taken the spotlight for fastest speedrunning Pokemon in a bunch of Pokemon games, including Pokemon Ultra Moon. So what makes Halucha so good exactly? Well, first off, you get an experience boost when using a traded Pokemon, which can be both beneficial and awful if you happen to go over a level limit set by the game. But luckily for Ultra Moon, the disobedience levels are so high that the chances of getting over leveled are extremely low. The next benefit to using Halucha is that the ability, nature, and a single IV will always be the exact same every time you receive this traded Halucha. This gives Halucha the Unburdened ability, 31 IVs in attack, and a brave nature that boosts attack but lowers speed. While this speed lowering nature can cause problems down the line, the max attack stat plus ability make up a ton of time that's lost from it. And now that we have Halucha, we're gonna gain back that experience boost that was taken away from trainer battles in Generation 7 Pokemon games by feeding and petting our Halucha for Affection level 2. Luckily, at this level of Affection, we won't experience any friendship bonds from our Pokemon like you can at higher levels of Affection, but will instead receive a small experience boost to power up Halucha immediately as we enter the normal trial. And the wildest thing about this trial is that as soon as you enter, you'll be able to spot the TM for Brick Break, a TM that's so accessible that it feels like they just want you to destroy the normal. And with that out of the way, we're that much closer to finally getting off of this tutorial island with yet another. Wow, and they call this guy the Grand Kahuna? While these Kahunas are normally pretty tough battles, Halucha is just built different, which is fantastic for us since they're one of the few trainers in the game to have Z crystals on their Pokemon. Each one of them has an ace Pokemon that holds onto this Z crystal, which will typically be used to knock out your Pokemon if your HP is low enough. So the solution to each of these Kahuna fights comes down to obliterating obliterating their entire team with X item setups before they can ever send out their ace Pokemon. It's truly that simple for every single one of them, which is why I won't go into too much detail on the Kahunas. And while that part of the game is pretty easy, it only really ramps up in difficulty from here. Because after Hala, speedrunners had to make a decision in terms of how the game would be speedran. On Melee Island, the first island in the game, you can eventually pick up the Sharp Beak item or Flying MZ Crystal. Both of these items give massive boosts to Halucha's flying type moves in different ways. When it comes to using Sharp Beak, holding it gives a boost to every flying type move right off the bat. This changes how you handle fights by forcing you to set up more X items than you could with a Z crystal. But Flyinium Z just needs to click 2 buttons to obliterate an opponent with a massive power boosting Z crystal. Both methods are quite fast, and it ends up being pretty close speed wise when using either item on your Halucha. But ultimately, only one of these items can be considered faster. And in the months that followed the release of Ultra Moon, me and Wartap worked together to push a route without Flyinium Z. While Flyinium Z is so powerful that it can save a lot of time from KOing threats such as the Water, Fire, Grass, and Dragon Totem, it still takes a lot of time to grab, has a small animation each time you use it, and earns you less experience and EVs from Totem Pokemon thanks to what's known as the SOS mechanics. With SOS mechanics, you earn more experience from a Totem Pokemon calling in an ally, as well as double the EVs gained from activating the SOS mechanics during the battle. And even though you're technically taking more time to KO more Pokemon, using Sharp Beak ultimately adds up to be more time saved than time lost thanks to extra levels, less animations, and a route that takes advantage of every single aspect of Halucha. Because one thing that Halucha can't take advantage of with Flyinium Z is its unburden ability. By eliminating Flyinium Z and instead taking advantage of healing berries, fossils, adrenaline orbs, and damage reducing berries, Halucha can take advantage of its entire kit. This kit includes both its ability and moveset, since the only way to take advantage of both is thanks to Halucha's ability to get rid of or consume the item it's holding through either taking damage or by using the move Fling. Fling is a dark type move with a base power that is dependent on the item that it's flinging at the opponent, which is why fossils and rare bones are so valuable to an Ultra Moon speedrun. And the thing about Z crystals is they don't count as being consumed when you use a Z move. And while they are useful in fights such as Totem Togedemaru, who will not die without a Fightinium Z boosted flying press, every other fight becomes way better without the flying Z crystal. These fights include Totem Araquanid, Alolan Marowak, Lurantis, and the hardest fight in the game, Totem Mimikyu, which is a perfect showcase of the power of the route without Flyinium Z. The battle against Totem Mimikyu starts off with Mimikyu getting a +1 boost to every single stat. And the only way for Halucha to survive a stab fairy move from Mimikyu is to lead with Popplio? That's right, with the power of Poplio's level 11 move, Baby Doll Eyes, we can lower Mimikyu's attack before it can knock out Popplio, thanks to the move having a +1 in priority. And once Poplio's gone, Mimikyu calls in its ally, Banette. Banette has some pretty awful moves like Curse and Will-O-Wisp that spell quite the disaster for our Halucha. So our best bet is to deal with Banette before Mimikyu by flinging a fossil onto it for a 100 base power dark move that KOs it instantly. And by using Fling, we can proc our ability to give Halucha just enough of a speed boost to outspeed Mimikyu and get rid of its disguise ability. Unfortunately, without high defenses, speedrunners are normally forced to smack, die, then revive Halucha due to how much damage Mimikyu does with Play Rough. And once revived, X defenses and X attacks become your best friend for your survival against Mimikyu. This fight is so bad, in fact, that you need to set up to +6 in order to even KO this monster. But the reroute to Ultra Moon that saved 30 seconds over the Flyinium Z route didn't stop there, because 2 items became extremely tantalizing for Halucha down the road. The first item was the TM for Acrobatics, a move that gives you a 110 base power move when you aren't holding an item, which is the perfect combination with its speed boosting ability that's procced when you get rid of your item. And finally, the idea of using this second item came to me in a dream. The use of a Roselli Berry on the last totem Pokemon in the game, Rabombi. Once you've reached Pony Island, the final island in the game, you can go towards the first berry tree you see in the Pony Wilds area for a chance to snag a Roselli Berry. This unfortunately is not a guaranteed berry and added a potential reset point to an already inconsistent game. But if you get lucky enough to get one, you could make Totem Rabombi look like a joke. With the Roselli Berry equip, you can have the amount of damage that super effective fairy moves do to you, which is extremely important to have since Totem Rabombi gets a disgusting +2 boost to every single one of its stats. Without Roselli Berry, Halucha can't reduce its power enough to survive and set up enough X attacks to KO the Rabombi, making it quite an understatement to call this thing a monster. But as we all know, Rabombi is not the biggest monster created in Pokemon Ultra Moon. The Pokemon we've yet to talk about that almost made Halucha relevant for speedrunning is Ultra Necrozma. Ultra Necrozma is the main villain for Pokemon Ultra Moon story that can only be reached by defeating 7 out of 8 totem Pokemon, 3 out of 4 Kahunas, and a disgusting ride through Ultra Space. Your goal inside of Ultra Space is to go into a white wormhole that leads to the most underdeveloped Pokemon town to ever exist. Seriously, it looks so cool, and I just want to go into the buildings! But the goal to reach this megalopolis is not actually a guaranteed goal. It's completely random as to whether or not you'll be able to find the white wormhole even on your first go through the Ultra Space wormholes. Some folks like myself have even gone through Ultra Space 3 times before finding the white wormhole 5 hours into my speedrun, forcing me to reset, and ultimately is one of the biggest reasons why folks don't speedrun this game in the first place. It's truly a terrible fate to almost get to Ultra Necrozma and just lose a stupid amount of time to this awful feature. But just beyond that wormhole is the ultimate battle against the hardest boss fight Pokemon has ever created. Ultra Necrozma not only has some insane moves, but also ridiculous stats that get pushed even further with a +1 boost to every single one of them as soon as you start the battle. And because of this Pokemon alone, speedrunners nearly gave up on using Halucha for speedrunning. That is, until a random viewer came into my Twitch chat and told me about using Zorua. In order to find Zorua, we have to avoid using Pokemon Refresh on Poplio, fight every mandatory trainer up to the school, and buy some Repel. We'll then have just enough levels on Poplio to use that Repel to avoid most encounters that aren't Zorua, since Pokemon that are of the same level as your lead Pokemon can't be repelled, but the others will. And while this doesn't help Zorua's nasty catch rate, it still goes such a long way for a ton of fights with its amazing free access to fake tears for school teacher Emily, having a third Pokemon for Totem Mimikyu so you can revive, and finally, the use of its ability on Ultra Necrozma. By putting Zorua at the front of your party, Halucha in the back of your party, and teaching the move Toxic to Zorua, we can take out Ultra Necrozma very easily with a fake Halucha.
All right, Winged Dragon of Ra, here we go. I have a trap card. Leer. 2, 3, 4. This is actually amazing. 5. And get wrecked. Get fucking debated. Get fucking debated. Let's go. Oh god, I'm about to get a crazy level up.
So let me explain what just happened. For some reason or another, even though Ultra Necrozma has very smart AI, it is very obsessed with using Ultra Necrozma's psychic move against our fake Halucha. It'll even go as far as to spam it against Zorua, even though the move clearly isn't working. This gives us the perfect opportunity to Toxic Solid very quickly and efficiently with some really awesome strats thanks to a random viewer. I would totally give them credits, but I still to this day don't remember who it was. But without them, Halucha might not have gotten a chance to shine like it does today in a route that truly bends to the will of our awesome wrestling bird. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time for some more Pokemon speedrunning news and content.